So we've talked about our members, we talked about their passion, we've talked about all the fun. I can't think of a person that I know that I've met in Rotary that describes all three. He's passionate, he's motivational, and he always has fun. So he's going to talk today about how he has a job that pays him to go to all these exotic places in the world. I want that job. He's internationally recognized. He's the author and speaker, and he's also he's a recognized author and speaker, and he's also our fellow Rotarian, Michael Angelo Caruso. I myself am interested in knowing how he got such an Italian name, first of all. But Michael's going to talk about his lifestyle business and how he has helped improve people on 5 continents and 49 out of the 50 states. So the first thing that should pop up in your mind is, what state didn't he cover, and is he planning on covering it? So with that, Michael, please go ahead. Michael Angelo Caruso, one of our motivational Rotarians who has motivated at least me, and I'm sure many of you others, through this club. So Michael?
Thank you very much, Roma. I appreciate all of your energy. Thank you, Roma. We appreciate all of your energy and all of your enthusiasm. Special greeting to a couple of key people. I haven't seen Joe McKim for a while. Hi, Joe. Haven't seen Jerry Gordonier in forever. And as you can tell by his screen name, he is the newly promoted president of the Michael Angelo Caruso fan club. And he promoted himself. It was such a fun thing getting ready for this talk, Roma, and I appreciate the invitation because it feels like an end-of-life achievement award or something, you know. And I've never really thought about myself. I'm a relatively young person still. I was raised in Trenton, Michigan, everybody, a member of a family of 6. I have 3 brothers. We were all born about 15 months apart, so we were very clustered in ages. I remember being a middle-class family, but I also remember drinking powdered milk growing up. And at one point, my mom, we either had trouble affording lunch bags or maybe they were unavailable. I can't quite recall, but I remember taking my lunch to school in the big barrel bags, the grocery bags, and getting made fun of because we didn't have proper lunch bags. I never felt like we did without anything. I had great parents. They loved us unconditionally. And despite any money problems we may have had, all of us were taking music lessons at a very early age. I remember a guy by the name of Mr. Lewis bringing a bunch of shiny brass instruments to Headkey School. And I chose the trumpet mostly because my dad played the trumpet. I was the firstborn. By the way, Roma, my name, Michael Angelo Caruso, my father's name was Michael, and I had an uncle Angelo, but I don't think the play on words, Michelangelo, was lost on my parents. So all of my brothers and I started playing acoustic instruments, which we didn't think too much about, one on clarinet, one on trumpet, one on drums, and one started on piano. And because there were 4 boys in the house and we all had to practice our instruments after school, it wasn't long before we figured out that we could actually practice together, playing duets or even trios, and then started playing as a group and eventually bought electrical instruments, and that was the beginning of my music career. And we didn't know it at the time that it would end up like that, but we ended up touring the country in a pop band called the Caruso Brothers. The music is still available on YouTube, and it was the most remarkable experience. I've talked with Jerry Gordonier about this a lot because he comes from that era and has a deep appreciation for music. But to understand how powerful music is in the human condition and learn it at such an early age is a gift. And thumbs up, everybody, if you play a musical instrument. Just you know how to do the thumbs up on the reactions down at the bottom? It really is a gift to be able to know how to make people smile and create music. And I didn't know it at the time, but all of this touring in the rock band was setting me up to be a performer in another type of business. And along the way, of course, we met a lot of famous musicians like Mike Love from the Beach Boys, and we opened for acts like Rick Springfield and Corey Hart and Joan Jett And we did some weird gigs too. We ended up opening one night for Foghat. You remember the hard rock band Foghat? And we opened for a band called UB40, which was a reggae group. I don't know how we got those gigs, but it made for an interesting resume. And I also had a chance to attend the Academy Awards, which is a very privileged opportunity. Very few people even know anybody that's attended the Academy Awards. And I went, I think it was 1997. It was the year of the movie The Titanic. You remember, with Leonardo DiCaprio, "I'm the king of the world." And they played that damn theme song every time the Titanic won an award. So it was, if I never hear that theme song again, it'll be too soon. So we all thought we were going to be famous and that our kids would never have to work and our grandkids would never have to work and all of their college educations would be taken care of. But it turns out, like most bands that are in the music business, very few actually get to the top of the triangle. The Caruso brothers were way, way down here someplace. And we ended up washing out after spending 10 years in the business. A lot of people don't know this. I lived with my parents until I was 30 years old. And it's not something I'm proud of. It's just the deal that we made that we would help our parents the rest of our lives in ways that we couldn't otherwise, as long as they didn't force us out of the house and force us to focus on getting regular jobs and drawing a paycheck. And they were very kind about that and very understanding. We ended up making good on our part of the bargain, by the way, and took care of our parents the rest of our lives, even though the music thing didn't work out. So around the time, this would have been around 1982 or so, maybe something like that. We started to think about doing other things with our lives. I had some transitory type jobs, the most substantial of which was a job in the telecommunications industry, where I was making 50 outbound calls a day to people I would never meet to try to get them to cut a purchase order for piece parts for their telephone systems. Now, this is a big change from being a rock star on stage and traveling the country and getting VIP treatment to being on a telephone with people I would never meet, trying to appeal to them just in with verbal cues to get them to, buy stuff from me. But I learned a lot about the sales process. So think about what's happened so far for me in my young life. I learned about the entertainment business, and then I learned about the education business because we were teaching people about telephone systems and quality and providing a quality of service and all of that. Then my father died in 1997. And when my dad died, he was my second parent to die. And when he passed away, I realized that I should probably do something with my life that I really enjoyed. Roma was kind to recognize my passion. I knew that I needed to do something I really wanted to do with my life if I was to really enjoy it. And I didn't really enjoy making 50 outbound calls a day to people I would never meet. When my father died, he surprisingly left me a little bit of money. He left all of my brothers a little bit of money. This frugal man who, we thought maybe was barely getting by, had saved some money through the years. And I used that money to launch my speaking business. And I had no idea what was going to happen, but I was single. I didn't have any kids or any serious obligations. And finally made this jump to the speaking business and took an immediate pay cut of 50%, 50. But I realized right away that in the speaking business, I was actually doing something where I could make a difference. I was doing something that was enjoyable to me. And I thought if I could figure out my calendar that I could make a good living from it and perhaps help a lot of people. And that's exactly what happened. This was over 20 years ago now. And by the way, at about the same time, I did what's called a group study exchange trip sponsored by an organization called Rotary. There was an ad in the local newspaper by a group called Rotary. I didn't even know how to pronounce the word Rotary. And I applied to go on this trip, and you could not be a Rotarian to go on the trip. I ended up going to South Africa for 5 weeks on Rotary's dime. We had a lot of fun on the trip, but we were traveling with strangers. South Africa was a very interesting place at the time. It was just past apartheid, where the blacks had all the power, but the whites still had all the money. Not a very safe place. We were mugged on the trip. And I came back with a deep, deep appreciation for this organization I didn't yet belong to. And I had told people on the trip that I was so impressed with Rotary I was going to join, but I imagine a lot of people on the group study exchange say they're going to join. I did join. It was the best decision I've ever made. It taught me that, and it still teaches me that there are lots of things in the world bigger than me. And this amazing service organization captured my heart. I'll always be a member. It taught me the value of giving back. It's become a kind of church for me. I tell people all the time, and so it worked out really good. I joined as a single person. I fit in like a square peg in a round hole because there's a lot of couples in Rotary back in the day, and then I met the woman of my dreams who also had Rotary roots. She went on a different type of Rotary exchange. She was an exchange student in high school, way back when she was in Oregon. And Renee Pathidis eventually joined the Troy Rotary Club, and we were living happily ever after. It was amazing to find somebody who shared those types of shared that type of sensitivity that I did about the importance of giving back. I didn't know when I joined Rotary that 16 or 17 years later I would become president of the Troy Rotary Club, walking in the footsteps of other great presidents. So many are on the call with us today, including our current president, Bala Murthy, and Linda Ludy, and Dave Donnellan, and Jerry Gordonier. And as you know, we change Rotary presidents every year, so many of you on the call are future Troy Rotary presidents. And then I had the even greater pleasure of becoming the District 6380 governor in 2016-17, and that was a beautiful experience as well. I now serve as Rotary Zone 28 Public Image Chair, trying to help educate people on marketing and how it works. And one of the things I teach people these days, because people are so busy, is that it works against you to create silos in your life, like a Rotary silo and then a vocational silo. So think of it as an avocational silo and then a vocational silo, and keeping those apart, because life is so much sweeter when you can work out a Venn diagram and just have one big ass silo where you're dealing from, you're making everybody happy all at the same time. And that's what I've been able to do with Rotary and my speaking career. Some time ago, I met a lady named Dottie Walters, and she said, well, you should feed this three-headed monster called the triple revenue stream. I said, what's that? And she said, well, you become a speaker, and you become an author, and you become a consultant. So there's these three silos, and then they cross-pollinate each other. And one of my proudest achievements is not creating those three silos, those three revenue streams. My proudest achievement is teaching other people how to do it. Roma had mentioned that I have a couple of Facebook groups, and I'm happy to promote them here with you. You may be interested in them. One of them is called Present Like a Pro, where I teach other people how to get paid to go out and share intellectual property, right? You don't know where you're going to be in 5 years. If you're not in love with your employer, if you don't have plans on retiring at your current place of business, it's very possible that you could make a fantastic consultant. And that would mean, of course, you'd have to get really good at speaking, and you'd have to publish something. And it would be my pleasure to help you with that. You can get free tips inside my group. It's called Present Like a Pro. It's a Facebook group. And all we do there is teach each other and help each other and encourage each other to be better communicators. So it's a lot of like-minded people. It's a great community. And then if you're a Rotarian, you may want to join the Get the Word Out Now group on Facebook, where we're helping people to grow Rotary, raise money for the greatest service organization in the world, and get attention for Rotary. And both of those groups are free, and it's my pleasure to play a little role in the message mix and asking people some deeper questions about how things really work. I've been looking forward to this talk, not just because it's fresh content for me. I don't usually talk about myself like this when I do talks, but also because I love Troy Rotary. We've had a lot of ups and downs in the 26 or 27 years that I've been a member, and I just love all of the people in the club, and I wish we could spend more time together. It's been especially tough during COVID, so I value this time. And now my favorite part of the program is answering questions. I saw some stuff coming through chat. Maybe Roma can tee some of those up for me. And if you'd like to take your phone off mute, we can chat a little bit as well. Jacob Knott says, he didn't know I attended the Academy Awards. How can I get in? I need to meet Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford. Yeah, Jacob, unmute, man. I'll give you a tip. The year that we went, we saw a lot of, there's a lot of people at the Academy Awards that you wouldn't recognize. There was an old actor by the name of Ernest Borgnine. He starred in a show called McHale's Navy, way before your time, Jacob. And for every Tom Cruise, there's like 1,000 Ernest Borgnines. So those are your chances of meeting Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford. Are you a movie fan, Jacob?
Oh, you know it. I got the wallpaper back there.
Good for you, man. We'll have to talk movies sometime. And COVID's been a great time for movies, catching up on stuff that maybe we wouldn't have had time to see any other time. Thanks for your question, man. And Jacob's been helping, by the way, with marketing speakers and events on our Troy Rotary Facebook page. So thank you for that, Jacob.
Okay, so Michael, there's a question from me. Is that Wyatt behind you in that armor?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is that Wyatt behind you in that armor? He's the only one that I know that has. Is he dangerous?
No, that's my best roommate. I've roomed with a few people through the years. This guy never says shit, man. He's just so polite.
It's a good thing too. Unlike your other roommate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. Any chance of the band ever to get back together again for any kind of gig?
It's nice of you to ask. Who's asking?
Me.
Oh, we did it really hard. We did 2,000 shows in North America, and when you do something that hard, there's an old saying that you can't go home again. You just can't. It can never be the same. So we have such fond memories of it. Interesting anecdote. I had an old friend back in the day who really enjoyed the band, and he kept pestering us to get back together and do something. And I kept telling him, sure, when hell freezes over, that'll be about the right time to do it. And he called me one day. His name was Dan Drotar, and he called me one day. And this is the sweet tapestry of life, everybody. When you look back over a lifetime, there of course are good memories, and of course there are bad memories too. And that's what makes life so interesting. Dan Drotar says, I said, how you doing? And he says, good. I just called to tell you that it looks like hell is frozen over. And I said, what do you mean? I didn't even know what he was talking about. And he said, well, you said that when hell freezes over, the band would get back together. I said, yeah, okay. What's your point? And he says, I've just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And it would be great. It would be great if you guys could get back together again. And we did. And we were terrible. We did a little club thing down river, and we sucked, man. It was so bad. I thought if we got together that the practicing would be terrible and the gig would be really good, fun. But it was the opposite. The gig was terrible, and the practicing was fun because I had lost that part of my brain, the hobby part, and Dan died right on schedule, by the way. The doctors gave him about 3 months to live. We booked an emergency trip, by the way, the buddies, all men, to Scandinavia. I didn't even know where Scandinavia was, but this is where Dan wanted to go. And we all went and we visited the 3 capitals in Scandinavia. It was Stockholm, Denmark, and Oslo. And Dan left the trip standing up. He came home in a wheelchair, and he died within a week of coming home. Isn't that interesting? And some people actually said, how dare you take him to Scandinavia when he was so sick? It was his idea.
Yes, God bless him.
And all he talked about during he didn't want to come home, Dave. And the reason he didn't want to come home is because he knew he was coming home to die. And all he talked about when he got home was how great that trip was, and that just made me very happy. So a longer answer than you wanted there, but that's it, man. You start looking back at how all of this stuff connects, all the relationships, all the ways you spend your time.
Yeah.
And at my age, I'm doing the same thing, Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Other questions? Preferably ones that don't make me cry.
Aw. Any questions from anybody? Jerry from the fan club?
When's our annual fan club meeting? I can't remember.
I don't know, man, but I need to raise your dues. I know that. Good to see you, brother. Jerry, tell everybody what you do. You're like the forgotten Troy Rotary president.
What I'm doing?
Tell them about your time as president. You were very young, and tell them why you can't come to meetings.
I'll tell you, and not to overshadow this wonderful presentation, but when you talked about how you joined Rotary, one of my favorite Rotary stories is how I joined Rotary.
Yeah.
I was 16 years old, and I was in Athens High School, and they had a thing called Boys State. And I don't know if you guys ever knew what Boys State was, but it's where a bunch of guys go to Michigan State University. They create a state, they create cities, and in order to go, you have to be sponsored by a club in your community, and it costs about $500 to do this. And you stayed a whole week there as 16-year-olds, this whole group of about 1,500 boys. And, $500 back in 1974, it's a lot of money now. It was $1 million back then. And my family wasn't far off from Mike's. We ate okay, but we didn't have a lot of money. And so we couldn't afford it. And but you had to be sponsored. So I stepped out to the clubs, the Moose Lodge, the Elks, whatever, and everybody rejected me, but for the Rotary Club. And I remember that you sent this application in, and I got approved, and I went to a Rotary Club meeting. It was at that time, it was at the Troy Hilton Hotel, which is now gone at 15 in Stevenson. But nonetheless, and I walked in there, and I was with the superintendent of Troy Schools, my principal, my counselor who had suggested I participate in this, and myself. And I had my little two-piece suit on, and I was all raring to go to Rotary. And of course, none of these gentlemen knew who I was, had never seen me. There was no picture. And at that time, much like Mike a little bit, we were mini rock stars. I was scalping tickets. I was making a living on the streets, as they used to say. And so my hair was pretty much past my butt, okay? It was very long by any standards. And I'm sitting there at the table, and the president, who, quite frankly, I don't even remember who it was at that time. Maybe Dave Donlan can remember, but nonetheless, Dave was around then. But I remember they announced my name, and I came up on the stage, and in the back of the room, I heard this person say, "Oh my God, look what we're sponsoring," okay? And the whole room started laughing because obviously I was not embarrassed, but I was a little shocked by the fact that the average age, by the way, in the club was somewhere around 63. So there I am up there, and obviously my appearance is shocking, at least many of the people in the audience, that this is the Rotary Club sponsored image. So that was a funny moment. Flash forward, several years later, I'm being inducted as the president of the Troy Rotary Club. And I don't know if I'm frozen now or not, Mike. But
how old were you?
But I think I was president at about 28, 29, somewhere in there. I lose track of years. But nonetheless, I get up in front of the club, who've come to, I think, love me, and I love them, and they all know me, and this, that, and the other thing, but I never shared the story. So I get up in front of the club in my indoctrination to become president, and I tell the same story I just told you. And from the back of the room, the same voice. It was Bill Price, the Price Funeral Home, who's no longer with us.
Oh, sure.
I hear this, oh my God, you're the kid we sponsored back in 92. It was just kind of a funny, bringing it, as you say, bringing it 360.
Yeah.
They didn't know that the long-haired rock and roll kid that they sent and saw on paper that I was worthy of sponsorship from Rotary, shipping me off to Boy State with that kind of just concern about my image, comes back later, as you have done, Mike, on a level way beyond my little presidency. But I mean, come back to this club and spend earnest time giving and participating and sharing in the Rotary concepts, and to come back there in a very short period of time, 10 years later, give or take a few, to become president of the same organization.
Yeah.
And I could say to you, that's really what I think about when I think about me and Rotary and your story, and a kind of a tracking each other in that sense.
Tell everybody what you do for a living now, Jerry.
Well, I practice law, which is always kind of a funny way to say it. After 36 years, I'm still practicing law. A knock on something, some wood. I'm hoping that maybe 4 more years and I won't be practicing law anymore, and I'll start enjoying the fruits of being 64 and enough.
Jerry, by the way, would be a very good program for the club, Bala, because he's got such amazing stories. He'd have to tell stories about dead clients so he doesn't breach confidentiality, but I'm sure he can figure out a way to do that. Any other questions, Roma?
Funny.
After 35 years, we have a bigger past.
There's a question from Eileen. Do you have any tips now that clubs are using Zoom? And I assume she means, how to engage them more, and maybe, innovation.
Yeah.
I think Eileen, jump in if I misstated.
Yeah, so if you put on gallery mode right now, and so that you see all of the faces, everybody, I'll show you a couple of tricks for better connectivity on Zoom. And I know this because Zoom is now 9 years old, and I brought Zoom to the district when I was governor back in I was about to be governor in 2015. So I've been using it a long time. I teach 2 online courses now using Zoom, one for sales and one for presentations. So I teach presentation skills in an online course. But I'll show you 2 tricks that almost nobody does, and they're extremely valuable. And the first trick is how to establish eye-to-eye contact on the Zoom platform. And it's counterintuitive because your eye's drawn to one of 2 things on the screen, either your beautiful image or the beautiful image of the person you're talking to. And both of those are not good connectivity. If you really want to look into the person's soul and establish eye-to-eye contact on the screen, you need to look at the lens of the camera and ignore the beautiful people on the screen. And that's how you really connect with somebody. So when I'm teaching sales, for example, I teach people, you got to stop looking at yourself, man. And you got to stop looking at the other person. Look into the lens of the camera and your closing ratio will improve. Second tip, and Dave Donaldson just did it. We want to establish in any conversation what's called psychological equity. So what happens is if your image, your profile is lower than the other people on the screen, you won't have as much influence. In parentheses, power. So watch what happens when I lower my screen or lower my posture. You see, I look more diminutive, and I'm not going to be nearly as influential. So all you do is you adjust that. It's called headroom at the top. It's the room between the top of the screen and your head. That's why it's called headroom. When you adjust that, and then you can see there's a parity in the people talking. Your heads are basically the same size. Nobody's looking down on another person, etc. So I hope that helps, Eileen. Great.
Well, it must have helped because everybody kind of moved their screen a little bit so that
That's great,
now it's a
Michael.
question of it's a question of who's got the bigger head.
You got Michael on
So what is one tip, and this comes from Joe, what is one tip you would give for public speaking to get comfortable with about being uncomfortable?
Joe McKim?
Yes.
Yeah, unmute, Joe. So I know you're thinking about
That one was for me.
starting a nutrition coaching. Last I heard, is that still true? Yeah.
For sure. And I think eventually too, I'd like to go around kind of speaking and consulting like you're doing. So
Yeah, I'm happy to help you, man. You're onto something there. That phrase, and I've said it often, is the secret of life. And Jerry knows this too because he's been in swimming in water over his head on occasion, just like most people who have a life well lived. Is that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Like Fuzia, we heard her talk a couple weeks ago, and she talked about her adventures getting out of Venezuela to the United States, an extremely uncomfortable ordeal in a country that wasn't taking care of business. And once she survived that, man, she can survive anything, right? It was Viktor Frankl who survived the Nazi concentration camps who said that the secret of life is not coping with happiness. It's the opposite. The secret of life is being able to cope with misery. It's being able to be comfortable even when you're uncomfortable. And this is the problem with public speaking or getting out in front of people, is that we become less of ourselves when we're in front of people. Our voice becomes quieter. Our gestures become muted. We're not even ourselves in front of the room. We grip the podium like it's a life raft, right? And then you're not natural. If you're not natural, you're not authentic. If you're not authentic, you're not believable. And this is why people can't sell. This is why people are giving average presentations. And so I help get inside their head a little bit and make that little tweak, make that adjustment that you're okay, you're doing great, And we combine that with some presentation skills. And then before you know it, you're cooking with gas. But I hope that's helpful, Joe. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Push through it.
yep, yeah, that helps. Cool. Thank you.
Pleasure. I hope somebody's watching the clock. Roma, keep talking.
Hello, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Jim.
I hear you.
Well, I just want to say, Mike, I just want to say this. During this time that everybody's on the computer a little bit more, I really enjoy your talks on LinkedIn,
Thank you.
Facebook. It's very entertaining and informative. So, get yourself out there because it's really terrific. So,
I appreciate that. And you know what I try to tell everybody, Jim, is everybody has a message. And a lot of times we think what we have to say isn't important. But when you can't expect people to give you a voice. You have to develop your own voice, everybody. And that's what we're trying to do within Rotary, is get you to be a better disciple for Rotary, a person who's actually a master promoter, even if you don't have that promotion stripe. So I'll never give up helping and teaching people to do this better. And I appreciate the kind words, Jim. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm all over LinkedIn. Margaret, look at Margaret's coming in from Minnesota. And Doug Vincent, by the way, is a special guest from Canada, everybody. So we have some cool people on with us today. Roma?
Yeah, and could the person with long letters and numbers, could you identify yourself, please? That's a 04M3MQC.
Yeah. And somebody keep your hand on the move them to the waiting room. In fact, if they don't answer, I say move them to the waiting room. Any other questions? Anything else anybody else wants to ask?
So I have one last question. Well, we have time for one more question. Before I ask my question, does anyone else have a question?
I have one more. I gave the inspiration this morning and I wrote it down on my clipboard because I'm more comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
But I realized if I end up looking down at it,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure I can hold it up like that, what's the best way when you have to read some of what you're talking about?
It's a great question, Eileen. So it's just like when you're giving a live speech, you want to maintain eye contact with the audience without showing them the top of your head because you're reading off of the podium. So the idea is to get the talking points up to your eye contact, right? The audience isn't going to move, but you can move your notes. So you can hold the clipboard up like this. And you can see if I just lower it, watch what I'm doing. Just lowering, just beneath the lens where you can see it. And now I'm at least 8 inches above the desktop. And my eyes don't have to travel as far, right? And the other thing I can do is I can do a trifold like this with the talking points or maybe even the exact verbiage. Watch this now. And this paper is going to go just to the right of the lens. See it? And now my eyes hardly leave the lens at all in order to read. Can you see my eyes moving? But just a little bit. Kind of like a teleprompter. It's what they do with all the news studios, of course. Hopefully that helps.
So another suggestion for that, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I recreated my notes on Word, and I switched from Zoom to Word, so it still looked like I was on the screen, but I didn't have any notes in front of me. That's something I found that could work.
And that's a mind game, because when you switch to Word, you can't see yourself anymore on the screen and you freak out. Right? You think, if other people can't see me, I can't see myself. Or if I can't see myself, other people. Yeah.
It's a mental war.
What's your last question?
So, my one last question for you, Michael, is, with all the pandemic and all the things that are going on, obviously the speaker life is traveling and getting in front of people and that interaction. How are you coping with that from your professional standpoint?
Well, thankfully, the online courses have been great to me. So I've just moved online. I do miss the travel, and I miss being in front of people. I think I do my best work in that way. It's such a specialized thing to be able to get up in front of 400 or 800 people and just start talking to them like you know everybody. Very, very few people do this well. And so by proxy, people find that impressive when a person can do it. And I've been able to capitalize on that, and I'm grateful. So it's become different on Zoom. I've been doing Facebook Lives. I've been doing LinkedIn Lives. My YouTube content, I have a YouTube channel, everybody. If you like learning through video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll be notified when new videos come out. But I've been able to keep my voice in that way. It's just a different kind of a presence. I've struggled much more with my psyche, Roma, not being able to travel. I feel like I'm not living my purpose like I used to, even though I really am in a different way. It's kind of robbed me of my identity. I've been struggling with that. I wouldn't call myself clinically depressed or anything, but I've had some challenging days, wondering who I am and when this is going to end. Probably like most of you. Thanks for ending us on an upbeat.
No, I think this is great, and you're definitely a people person, and Rotary, at least I know since I joined the club, you have been one of the motivators here, you and Renee, and of course everybody else. But I think it's great that you're part of the club. And then the other thing I should mention is, because it is Member Month, is we've got a lot of talent within our club itself, within our district. And I love the fact that we're spotlighting our own members who are, you're out there speaking to